Is your child defiant, independent, annoyingly inquisitive? After a long, hard day of following the rules, who wants to deal with troublesome kids? 49% of children suffer from oppositional defiant disorder, or ODD. Symptoms of ODD include independent thought, rampant creativity, and failure to submit to authority. But now there's a solution. The good people at Pilfer can help you with their time-release, once-daily capsule, Compliacin. Your child won't be able to form his own opinions, let alone express them. It maintains your child's ability to go to a state-run school and perform simple tasks around the house. You won't have to worry about parenting, and the school won't have to deal with your kid asking questions. Compliacin. You'll go from this.
Quit telling me what to do! Quit telling me what to do! Quit telling me what to do!
To this.
Good morning, Mother. I love going to school. And this week we're learning all about how the government is our federal family and they're here to help us.
Compliacin. Talk to your school psychiatrist and ask for it by name.
Dead blood in the streets, it's up to my ankles. Sheet blood in the streets, it's up to my knees. Sheet blood in the street, the town of Chicago. Sheet blood on the rise, it's following me.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Abolitionist Abstractions. As always, we are covered by a BIPCOT no government license. This allows reuse by anyone except governments and the agents thereof. You can find out more information about this at bipcot.org. All right, so I am back, and we have another special episode this week. It's going to be another joint Abolitionist Abstractions, LUA, TVP. Yeah, we're leaving SOL out of this one. Screw those guys. Project, as I am joined once again by Shane Radliff, live and in person. What's going on, my brother?
Hey, not much. Just enjoying this last morning here at our special guest house, and then I'll continue my journey down to Austin. So it's been great so far. I guess a little bittersweet. I guess maybe I'll start to feel those post-fest blues today once I start driving home, starting to hit the road towards Texas. So yeah, it's been great. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, Shane and I have been together for pretty much a week now at this point, and we talked last week. The episode I put out last week was actually a vlog he and I did together when we first got to the fest, and he mentioned our
long ago.
Yeah, I know, it feels like ages ago, and yesterday all at the same time, but. He mentioned our special guest, and yes, we are indeed. Shane and I are together again, and we are recording live from the living room of one Mr. Ben Stone, who has decided to join us today. Ben, man, how the heck are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Good to be with you guys today.
Well, we are super psyched to have you with us, obviously,
sure.
And very appreciative of the hospitality you and your family have shown us as we've been here for a couple of days now, hanging out with you. Post-fest, as Shane mentioned, we left the Midwest Peace and Liberty Fest on Monday, and we traveled down here, and we've been here ever since. And I'm still contemplating when I actually want to leave because it's so nice here, but. Yeah, so we decided to do one last show before Shane heads off because he's going to head on his journey, and I will eventually continue mine. Like I said, not really sure when, but I will have to go see my kids eventually. So I got to Skype with them last night, though, so that was nice. But anyway, I got yelled at because there was a picture taken yesterday while Shane and I were recording a show for LUA, and Ben happened to be sitting in for it, and I got a bunch of messages. Oh my God, when do I get to hear that episode, Ben? You did a recording with Ben? Oh my goodness. So now we've dragged you back out of retirement. I feel like every time you and I talk, I drag you out of retirement. The very first time I ever had you on Seeds of Liberty was one of our earliest episodes, but you were planning on stepping out of the limelight then, and you told me as much. And you were very gracious. I said, I'll do one more for you. And then you disappeared for a while. And then you came out for like a minute, and I grabbed you again. And now we just invaded your house.
It's like Michael Corleone says, every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
Well, listen, man, you've built up an incredible fan base and some very loyal people that are always super stoked. I mean, while we were at the fest, there was plenty of people that were obviously disappointed that since you made the appearance last year that you couldn't come back up this year.
Yeah.
Although obviously they weren't disappointed enough. I kept inviting people. I was like, come on down to Ben's. We're gonna go hang out. It'll be fun. But everybody has real lives and jobs apparently.
Yeah, they have jobs and stuff.
Yeah, Shane and I don't know anything about that anymore. We're both technically unemployed and traveling, so that's a lot of fun. But anyway, so we've actually had like a number of great conversations, which as always we didn't record. So sorry, folks, you're going to miss all that. We discussed earlier possibly trying to write to the call the NSA and see if they'll send us a copy of the file, but
and have their audio engineers clean it up for us too. We pay them anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, we solved all the world's problems in our conversation theoretically, and we came up with all the right answers, how to make incredible amounts of money, make everyone happy, have world peace. Shame we didn't record it.
I know.
Right, yeah. I forgot what we were talking about too.
Yeah, we should have taken notes.
I know, one of us should have. You would think that that between the three of us, one of us would have been aware enough. But yeah, anyway, so it's hey, look, the sun's coming out. That's nice. It's yeah, I don't know. I've been having a lot of fun, obviously, for the past week, and this has been awesome. And even though Shane's going to leave us today, well, this has been a heck of an experience, and I just can't wait to see what happens going forward. For you, Shane, you got a lot more stuff you got going on, which is pretty cool. And you gotta go ahead and pick up some stuff, and then you're going all the way to Austin, right?
Yeah. So tonight I'll be heading to Vandalia, Illinois, the old state capital, to spend one final evening with my mom before I head down south, and I'll head to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to hang out with Aaron Thompson for an evening, and Michael Koger, I think is his co-host name.
Yes.
So I'll be spending the night there. I think Aaron's going to cook some dinner for me. He's not going to have to cook any meals or anything. Haven't had to for the past week, which is
I know
nice.
It's been so nice.
I have a camp stove with two bottles of butane, but I've used them like twice. Yeah. Those were for my van life practice runs back in March or whenever those were. But yeah, then I'll be heading down to Austin. I plan on doing, hopefully a live stream or two if I can find the cord that I need to do that with, because I'll be passing right through Waco. So I'm going to try. I'll probably burn an hour or two there, just trying to find the old, infamous location and record a vlog from there, because I've never been to Waco, and that's a pretty important part of American history. I think a lot of anarchists and libertarians came to this philosophy by witnessing the state just murder children and women and innocent people. So I don't know, that's kind of the plan right now. And then I'll get to Austin, move in with Kyle, and it'll be awesome. I don't know what it's going to be like. I don't know what Austin's like, but it's going to be fun. I have a feeling.
Well, yeah, but that's part of the whole adventure, right? You're not supposed to know what these things are like. Right. You're supposed to just take it as it comes. Yeah, that Waco thing. I mean, I've obviously never been to Texas at all, so I've definitely never been anywhere near Waco. But I when you first told me about that, I was kind of jealous. I was like, I want to be able to do stuff like that. I can't travel that far, and unfortunately, I guess like the closest thing if I wanted to go like do a live stream from Kent State. I guess that's probably like the closest thing from where I am right.
Close to here.
It was what I'm saying. From where I am now and where I got to head back to. I guess I could do that, but I don't know. That doesn't seem exciting as doing something from Waco. If I wanted to head all the way out west, I'd go out to Ruby Ridge. Maybe I'd do something from there.
I've spent some time at Manzanar, where one of the World War II concentration camps were, where the internment camps.
Oh, really?
They don't call them concentration camps. They call them internment camps, because that's so much better than a concentration camp. But standing where the gates were of Manzanar, there's one really famous photo, black and white photo of the front of the camp, and I have stood right where the camera stood for that, and it is really emotional.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine.
And where is that, Manzanar?
It's in the Eastern Sierras in California. Okay. It's where most of the people from the West Coast were, most of the Japanese Americans were put there in horrible housing conditions in an area. The Eastern Sierras can get like crazy amounts of snow at times. Essentially, it's a desert until it's covered in snow.
Sure.
But, they did the best they could with what they had. And there were excuses like, oh, here's a picture of them playing basketball. Here's a picture of them playing baseball. See, it's not like a concentration camp. They can play baseball. Yeah.
Yeah, they have basketball hoops at prisons, too.
Yeah.
I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't some similar pictures floated from the German concentration camps to try to prove that everybody was being treated really well?
Yeah, in the 30s, before the war actually got going, the concentration camps, the excuse in Germany was that they were, they were doing this to protect the Jewish people from the anger of the Germans. And after the night of Broken Crystal, when they smashed these people's windows, that was the excuse. Well, we're protecting you from the public. And that's kind of very much like the excuses they use now with the internment camps, where immigrants right now, families are being divided.
Cycle's kind of repeating.
Yeah, and
scary.
We look back. I don't know how many times in my memory I've heard Americans say, "Well, how did the German people look the other way? They have to have had some kind of guilt with what happened to the Jews in Germany." And well, if that's true, why are you looking the other way now? I mean. Where were you looking in World War II when they were rounding up German Americans and Japanese Americans and Italian Americans? But I don't know. Collectivism is weird.
Yeah, that it is. And well, I mean, there's that cognitive dissonance that people separate, because they've been, it's been pounded into their heads that the Nazis were evil and they were the epitome of all that is wrong with the world and what could be wrong with the world, and we can't possibly be, because like you said, I mean, that from what I recall, restudying history, I should say, because when I was first taught it was all bullshit, but studying the more of the real history, that was the justifications from what I recall from FDR with the Japanese. It was kind of like, that's how they couched it. Oh, we're protecting you.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure,
Yeah. There's so much anger among the American people for Pearl Harbor. We don't want you to get hurt, so we're going to take everything you own and shove you into a camp. Thanks, FDR.
Yeah.
You're helping.
Yeah, and the fact that most people have I honestly think, I mean, there's enough controversy over the Holocaust. There's the people that deny it happened. There's the people that say the numbers were fudged and whatever. And people get their ire. Even here in the good old USSA, people get their ire up about that. But most people, at least that I've encountered, most people have either seemed to have forgotten, or they maybe purposely weren't taught that the internment camps actually happened here, and that these And I honestly think if it wasn't for, as much as he drives me absolutely batshit with his very leftist attitudes on most things, if somebody like George Takei wasn't around right now, I don't think most people would have any clue.
Yeah,
because he talks about it openly, like his family, like he lived through it.
Right, he was a kid.
Yeah, he was a kid and he was placed in the internment camps. Although unfortunately, I think Stockholm Syndrome has got a hold of poor George a little too much, because he still defends the government in a lot of other areas, kind of like what happened with Chelsea Manning after she was just brutalized with that solitary confinement and essentially torture, what they did to her.
Right.
And then she comes out the other side going, "Oh yeah, this is all wrong and we need to stop this, but yeah, we still need taxes, we still need vote." It's a shame.
Yeah, Kyle's talked about with some of his coworkers. Obviously, they're more kind of the leftist variety, and they've don't do research very well. So the pictures they were showing are actually from the Obama administration, and they kind of thought those were Trump's doing. And
those pictures.
Sure, that stuff's still happening, but it's funny whenever they're like outraged about, oh my gosh, they're separating children from their parents.
Right.
And then it's like, oh yeah, I love FDR. It's like, do you know what he did? Do you have any idea what he did? So are you really against this? So I don't know. It's just a lack of knowledge of history, which allows these cycles to take hold over and over and over again, and people aren't too stupid or aren't too stupid to learn this. It's just don't.
Yeah,
it's sad.
Well, it's a little bit like you guys mentioned Stockholm Syndrome. It's kind of like that. It's a dealing mechanism to where they don't really want to face this stuff, because if they do, they have to do something about it. It's just like with Waco, they really don't want to think about that stuff. They don't want to realize that within our lifetimes, the governments are doing stuff like this. But if they really deal with it in their mind, then they have to deal with it in real life, and that means I got to do something other than sit here and watch TV or whatever.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's. Because it's so I mean, for us, I guess, I mean, I don't like to speak for other people, but I think the three of us come from a very similar vantage point on a lot of these things. For us, it's easy to look back and go, well, yeah, you can connect the dots, and it's like Shane said, it's not that difficult to find these things. But number one, just like the old Murray Rothbard quote about economics and how it's looked at as a dismal science. History to most people is boring.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, I was in upstate New York, staying at a friend's place for a couple of days, and both nights that I was up there, we ended up, having a few beers, sitting out on the porch, and just having really long conversations about stuff. And his wife joined us, and his wife is not an anarchist, although she's very anti-government for a lot of things, but she's one of those people that still thinks there has to be some kind of order. And she, despite having been with him for this long, and despite him coming to all these ideas, and actually he was a fan of my show, a fan of Seeds of Liberty very early on. So like, she's heard us all talk about this stuff time and time again. She still doesn't think, that's not going to work. We could do something else. But talking to her and, I during the conversation, it came up about the whole, how did you get here? Why do you think the way these things? And, I've talked about this plenty of times before, where most of my friends came through the study of economics. I guess I did maybe subconsciously still view it as a dismal science. I didn't pay that much attention to it. I came to it through the study of history, which is why I do think, at least I used to think it just kind of arrogantly, but now it's kind of been proven out more and more and more that I have an advantage over some of the people that travel in my circles, because I can look at these things, and when they start saying, like, for instance, when the Trump thing came up and everyone's like, oh, well, we got to stop Hillary, anybody but Hillary, and he's just different enough to probably do something. It's like, no, you guys, you remember I'm the history guy. Remember, I'm telling you, like, when it came to Trump, I've been saying Reagan 2.0 for like ever since he announced. I'm like, you watch, it's going to be Reagan all over again. He's going to talk the right language. He's going to do these things, and then he's just going to grow the size of government anyway.
Yeah.
But getting back to the conversation with my friend's wife, we're going through all these ideas, and when it came to the thing of history, she's like, yeah, I don't know a lot about that stuff, and I just have no interest in it. And I'm like, okay. And she said, we talked about it in school and how it was boring, and I'm like, yeah, I get, because just like Rothbard talked about with economics, it's almost, I think, to put my tinfoil hat on a little bit, I think it's done by design, where history is made to be boring. I mean, you will get the occasional, even in the government indoctrination centers, you will get the occasional teacher who's really excited about history and will dress up and do all these things and try to help the kids learn. But even then, they're only given a very truncated version of history. I call it, I refer to it as the whitewash.
And they're forced to be there too.
Well, that obviously affects learning overall, no matter what the class. I think when you're forced to learn it, most people are going to be like, "Oh, this kind of sucks." But I refer to it as the whitewash version of history, because you get the little bits and pieces that that praise all the things the residents of the awful office have done over the years, and then just kind of brush over the bad things, like the things with the internment camps that nobody seems to know. Like, most people don't even seem to know about it, or like, well, yeah, it was done for their protection, so of course we should have done that. And it's nothing like the Germans. No. They weren't gassed, so it's completely different.
Right.
No. Our leaders here in the U.S. say, they wouldn't do things like that. So I think that's why, like the Hitler and Mussolini and some of those other folks are so demonized by, Western leaders, because, they want to seem like they're the benevolent ones. Like, Hitler and Mussolini and those folks, they were really bad, but we aren't like that. We aren't like that. So I think that has something to kind of do with it too, and kind of the lack of tracking policy and actions by administrations throughout, consistently. It seems like the right only focuses on the political crusaders focus, the devoted ones focus on it, but there's kind of this emotional, just this emotional reaction whenever, someone sees something they disagree with, and then they don't realize that the person that they, advocate for did the same thing. So I don't know. It's kind of tough.
There were internment camps, in a sense, in a very real way, in the U.S. in the 1800s. People just don't recognize the reservation system as being that. But they rounded people up. They separated families. Any resistance they crushed. And sometimes when it just wasn't convenient to move them to reservations, it was just easier to kill them, like at Wounded Knee. You had a whole group of elderly people, no warriors at all, no weapons. They had been completely disarmed, and it was the middle of winter, and they're just camping next to a river, just trying to survive the winter. And the military had a new toy, the Hodgkin's gun, I think it was called, was like a Gatling gun, but it shot a really big, essentially an anti-personnel grenade. And so you would have air bursts with shrapnel coming down. And they had this brand new toy, and they're like, well, we gotta do something with this thing. Somebody bought it for us. They're like, a SWAT team, they're not going to not use their equipment.
Our budget is not going to get increased next year unless we make use of these products, boys. We have to do something.
So their training was so poor with this new Hodgkins gun. I think it's Hodgkins or Hodkin, something like that. Anyway, so they charged, it was the 7th Cavalry, so they charged like they always do on horseback while the artillery was back in the back supposed to be firing ahead of the charging cavalry, but they ended up firing right into their own cavalry, and they had some pretty bad casualties from friendly fire from their own guys. And when they're done slaughtering a village full of old people and children, then posthumously the dead soldiers got this what's the big medal?
Medal of Honor.
Yeah, the Medal of Honor. They gave a Medal of Honor to soldiers who were killing unarmed Indians in a village and accidentally got killed by their own troops. So they gave them a Medal of Honor.
Yeah, it's twisted.
Jeez.
Oh man, and mostly Americans don't have any idea what happened at Wounded Knee.
Oh no, yeah, I had no idea. Like I had heard the name going through school, but by the time I got out of school and started to decide that I maybe needed to take a look back and see what I missed, I remember coming across it and going, "Oh yeah, I remember this name. This is just one of those, this is one of those fights with the Indians and the Americans won." And it's like, "Oh no, this was nothing like that." Kind of like originally. I mean, I've talked about this before. My whole jump start into relooking into history is when I stumbled across what actually happened at the Whiskey Rebellion. Kind of like the same thing where like I remember going, "Oh yeah, George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, these guys are my heroes. They're wonderful. They had to, there was people who were trying to ruin the new America, so they had to put their foot down." And it's like, "Oh no, wait a minute, not what happened at all."
Going after veterans of the war they just fought.
Yeah. Who were pissed off because they hadn't gotten paid, and they were told that they were fighting for for the whole taxation without representation thing. It's like, wait a minute, we just fought for you idiots for nothing, and over a 3% T-tax, and now you're going to charge us 25% on whiskey. But yeah, we're the bad guys. But yeah, you're right though. Like I hadn't even put that together either. The fact that the reservations really were internment camps. That's a really good point, and it's true because if you look at what happened, it's the same thing playing out. Just the players have changed slightly, and the justifications will get altered to fit the time period. And then because especially nowadays in what I always refer to as the Twitter and meme generation, where everybody has such short attention spans. And again, I do believe that's done largely by design, just like with the constant, ever since the advent of the 24-hour news cycle, and they just fill it with crap just to keep people focused on what they want them to keep focused on. It's so easy for people to forget. And even if they're reminded of it, it's like, oh well, that was back then. Like you look at the back in the 1800s when the reservation thing first started getting started. Oh yeah, that's not it's different. Well, no, there's still Indians who live on reservations right now, and and they have to fight to keep their lands in a lot of situations,
And they still have prohibition of alcohol there, which works so well.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Most people go, "Oh, all those Indians are drunks." Well, why? Why did we not learn our lessons from prohibition in any form? When the government does that, it always backfires. It always creates more of what you claim to want to stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so easy for people to forget this stuff because they look at it and go, "Oh, that was back then." It's like, okay, well, let's move forward. Let's talk about the internment camps during World War II. Okay, that was still a different thing. And then, as you mentioned before, Ben, what's going on right now with the immigration situation and people doing. Although Shane, that was a good point you brought up. I did think that was really funny when I saw all those people freaking out and showing the pictures. I was like, no, Obama did that.
Yeah, and then it's funny too. Like with conservatives, it's disappointing. But whenever they look at the current, I guess, internment camp situation, it's there's a really easy way to avoid this problem. Don't enter into America illegally with your children. And it's like, so don't break the law. Like they come from this. Some of these folks probably come from really terrible situations. Yeah. So it's either take this risk or maybe die or live a subsistence life or something along those lines. So. Yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know. Morality doesn't ever really enter the picture, it seems.
Yeah, it's really funny. I did a thing on this a couple of years ago. There was I'm not going to name a specific name of a popular person, but I was having a private discussion with them about immigration, and they said, well, that's easy for you to say. You're in Ohio, I'm in Texas, and you just don't see what's happening here. You don't understand what immigration is doing to American culture. And I'm like, dude, I was a teenager in the San Joaquin Valley. You know, we're picking lettuce, we're picking tomatoes, I was in the fields working elbow to elbow with the kind of people that you're telling me that disgust you. And I got to tell you, they were here first. You know, in Texas specifically, if you think about it, Texas, the U.S., there were settlers that went to Texas when it was part of Mexico and asked for permission to move in. There was I think it was 120 or 130. Mm-hmm. And the Mexican government had an absolute law, no immigrants from the U.S. And so they got a special permission for this 130 or whatever it was. Okay, we'll allow 130 to come in. So as soon as the 130 come in, all their families come in too. So there becomes this flood of illegal aliens from mostly Tennessee, Arkansas, some other southern states. These are very poor Southerners. These were not plantation owners and that kind of thing. They were very poor, a lot of them from Appalachia. And they go flooding into Texas, and guess what? They were all illegal aliens. All the original inhabitants of that came into Texas from the U.S., except for the 130 or whatever it was, were all illegal aliens. And if you're descendant of one of those original Texas settlers, and then what did they do? They started a war to separate themselves. So, I mean, if you're, maybe you're afraid of all these Mexicans coming up into Texas and starting a war and separating Texas again. That'd be a great thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I'm all for that. But it's funny because on that point, it's, because Shane, you keep mentioning the more conservatives, like the right and how they look at this type of stuff. That's a lot of those people who make those arguments. But on the flip side, they're also usually the same ones who are on the Israeli side of the Israeli-Palestinian one.
Right.
And what's their argument? Oh, they're just taking their homeland back. All right, so let the Mexicans have your goddamn house in El Paso, motherfucker. I don't understand. What's the problem? They're just taking their homeland back, right? Am I missing something here? Is the logic not actually fit? I don't know, guys. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong here, but it boggles my mind. I mean, I know on some level because I had to come to grips with this myself when I finally came to anarchism and said, all right, I was wrong about a whole bunch of things and I need to rethink things. So I understand that, the contradictions can just slip by you, especially if you have a emotionally vested interest in making sure it doesn't go the other way. Mm-hmm. But now even still, it's like some of those, so blatant. Like I said, that one to me always sticks out. It's like, I mean, I've obviously, ever since I kind of figured out what's going on, I mean, I don't really necessarily side with anybody, but I'm all for the Palestinians getting, not being in an open air prison anymore.
Right.
But if you're going to defend the Israelis on the pure basis that it's their homeland and they're keeping invaders out of it, essentially, then how in the hell can you even possibly try to justify the reverse here in the States? I don't get it.
Yeah, it reminds me of Prof. CJ's presentation when he was talking about the unknown unknowns. I remember what political ruler said that. But if you don't know that those contradictions exist, and even if someone tries to point them out to you, I mean, it's I've tried to point them out before with people, but if so they aren't unknowns anymore. But yeah, I don't know. I've said this many times before, but it really just comes down to the lack of first principles or philosophical foundations. That's really what it comes down to.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, it's all about pragmatism. It's all about pragmatism. Even though the means they're using aren't pragmatic at all, they're actually and oftentimes counterintuitive to the goals they espouse. But I lost my train of thought, but for first principles, right? Because I've talked to some of my family members about this before, and they don't like. I look into philosophy. I try to understand what people thought before me, so I can come to more solid foundations for myself. And they just think philosophy is a waste of time. Philosophically or in theory, maybe, but that doesn't help me in the real world. And it's like. I don't know. Philosophy, even it is an interesting subject, but it also influences, you know, the actions you take and the positions that you take as well. And there's a connection between the philosophy and the action. It helps to influence your decision making. So I think that's really kind of the crux of it. That and just the lack of critical thinking and utilization of the trivia method, but. I don't know. Philosophy is important. You know, having those firm philosophical foundations, or else you get what we have today, with people who don't know what they actually believe and they don't really know much about themselves. They don't, know much about history or anything else. It's just kind of, you know, whatever their great man, their selected great man says. That's just where they fall.
Yeah. You know, I think philosophy has taken the same hit that Murray Rothbard was talking about with economics, and what we were kind of talking about with history too. Is it is presented to the public and to every kid that's growing up as something that's so high-minded and it's very difficult to understand, and don't waste your time trying to learn all that. There's so many different theories of philosophical thought, and you know, there's this guy and there's that guy, and there's these weird German names that you can't pronounce anyway, and don't try to learn all that stuff. There's just too much, and it's not really practical in life. That's what you say either when you haven't bothered to look at it or when you don't want someone else to look at it.
Right.
Because really, philosophy just boils down to, why do you make the decisions you make? Why do you act the way you act? And is there a moral reason, or is there no such thing as morality? This is real basic stuff that you can contemplate without, you know, reading all of Kant's works or Nietzsche, or, you know, you don't have to, like, you don't have to. You don't have to memorize some dead guy's philosophy to just get to the basics and figure out that every decision I make is based on a series. And really, that's the same with economics. Like, that's what economics boils down to. It's a series of decisions. And that's why, in my mind, philosophy and economics are almost the same thing. They're just, you know, you don't need tables and to be a good accountant to understand economics. It's really just the decision-making process.
Yeah,
right.
And they're all, because they both fall into like the human action category. So yeah, they're all like that. And I definitely agree with you. Although, because I've said similar things in the past about how philosophy was presented, especially through the schooling system. For me, when I was growing up and going through school, it was, what I recall is, you know, pretty much, I mean, and this even happened like in the movies and the TV, whenever like if somebody was in college and they were a philosophy major, it was either that they were an arrogant prick, like that's how they were perceived, or they were just kind of like, oh, this is just frou-frou stuff. This is for people who don't actually want to, they want to get a degree, but they don't actually want to do a job. They want to just, like, so that's how it was presented. And I absolutely believe, I mean, this was one of the first realizations I came to a few years ago, and I started talking about it a lot. And I said, you know, I really think that, you know, with the way the Prussian system was instituted here, as far as school goes, there were things that, and you know, like I said, I'll put my tinfoil hat on for some people who may think this is crazy, but if you look at it, it's the reality. There's 4 subjects that were, I really believe that are at the crux of all this. How, like you were saying, Ben, about how, you know, if you don't want people to know about certain stuff, kind of like the same way before Martin Luther came out with the Reformation, nobody knew what the fuck was in the Bible except the priests, because they were the only ones allowed to read it.
You had to trust them,
exactly,
and their word is what was there.
Exactly, but there, you know, it's history, which you're given a whitewashed version of. It's economics, which you're given the standard Keynesian or some kind of quasi Keynesian. You know, you're not allowed to learn about any other type of school or anything like that. Philosophy, which is treated in the way that we're discussing, so most people stay away from it, and the study of logic outside of the field of mathematics. Yeah,
literally, like, how to think.
Exactly. Yeah. You'll get like, I remember learning logic in math class to do that type of stuff, but it was never taught, you know. And I mean, I'm not that old, but I still go back to school in the 80s, and things have changed. Things have continued to change drastically. I mean, the Prussian model's still there, but it's even more so now. Like, now they don't even give civics classes in school anymore. Again, so why? Oh, you don't need to learn about that stuff. You'll figure it out when you're an adult. Oh no, that's when you should be learning it. But yeah, those 4 subjects I really believe are at the crux of why so many people are so misled. Yeah, because those are extremely important. Like Shane was saying about philosophy. You know, I grew up thinking, oh, who needs to, like, I knew the names like Aristotle and Socrates, and like other than seeing who was it? Was it, I think it was Socrates. Oh yeah, Socrates in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. You know, I was like, oh yeah, he was pretty cool in that, but other than that, I had no interest in it. But now, like, you know, that's all I read. All I read these days is economics, philosophy, and history because it was kept from me for so long.
Yeah.
And I realize the importance of it now because, like you said, they're all interconnected, and philosophy and economics especially. And yeah, if you can just understand the basics, you don't. I mean, I've gone through and read some of the bigger stuff and some of the, but that's just I want to take the time to do it. But I think you're absolutely right. A lot of this stuff is just so basic that anybody can figure it out. You just have to recognize that it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I spent some time in college, unfortunately, higher level indoctrination, and I was minoring in philosophy at the university that I never got the magic piece paper from. Got the magic piece paper for the associates, but not for the bachelors. But I took quite a few philosophy courses, and I even met with one of my he was my epistemology teacher. I even met with him, and there was a chapter at the end of the book of George H. Smith's Atheism, the Case Against God, where he just kind of talked about, how we get, well, it was just a basic, primer, or I guess a basic introduction to, how we obtain knowledge. And I sent that to my teacher and my professor, and I said, hey, I'd like to talk about this because it seems like, it kind of overlaps with what we were talking about in class, and went over, the non-aggression principle and, the idea of objective universal morality. And, he'd never heard of any of this before.
Wow.
Nothing, absolutely none of it. And I'd always go into class and I'd be reading Human Action or The Ethics of Liberty by Rothbard or X, Y, or Z. And, I was always really interested in it. But what's taught in, higher level indoctrination in the philosophy realm, it's just, you're immediately presented with a subjective, relative position. And there's a book I read where it was by a professor who'd been in the philosophy field for a long time, but the default position for a lot of students is, subjectivism or, relativism. So when it comes to a lot of these really important things like morality and ethics, it's kind of much like democracy, where each individual has to make their decision for themselves, and it's like that's not really good. So automatically, right when you enter that higher level indoctrination realm, it's just everything's subjective. There's no such thing as objective knowledge or objective morality. This is just how things are. And then the couple professors I had, they would mock the objectivists, not the objectivists in the Randian sense, but the objectivists in more morality and ethics. They'd mock them and be like, "Isn't that just such a weird idea? What do you guys think of that?" And it's like, well, thanks for being non-biased and letting the students come to their own decisions. Appreciate that. So even within the higher level indoctrination realm, philosophy is just. And I enjoyed it. And I actually put forth effort. I went and met with the teacher, but it just, for someone who's actually interested in these things, it grinds you down and it's not interesting. It's awful. And then they make you write these stupid essays on, just this really dense, philosophical subject material that really doesn't make sense, and it's not supposed to. Yeah. There's nothing to make sense of. So, I guess that's it.
Yeah, well, I mean, these days, I guess, I mean, there's always, I mean, who runs the philosophy departments these days? It's the quasi-Marxist and the faux, it's actually the faux postmodernist, because I've actually started to dabble a little bit into that stuff recently, and I've come to the realization that Thaddeus Russell is right. Most people who espouse postmodernism have no idea what the fuck they're talking about, and they are not talking about what Foucault and all them were talking about back in the day. But yeah, it's like like you said, Jay. Even now, it's still like they have these things and people take these classes, but you're given a very cookie cutter, outline of what they want you to know, and that's it. And most people who want to step outside of that you're looked at as the weird one. Like, why would you want to read? Why would you want to read stuff from these guys? We have all the answers here, right?
Oh, that's already been debunked by some Keynesian. Yeah, why are you looking into that? Yeah.
Well, that's why, for people like us, at least we can recognize that there's plenty of other ways to learn, Hey, at least you got the associate's degree, man. I never even finished that. I did 3 tours, as I referred to it, three tours at a local community college.
I dropped out all 3. Well, I guess I got 1, but
yeah, I never managed to complete enough credits to actually get any type of degree, but I'm not really crying about it because I have no student loans to pay for. I actually paid for everything up front and got it out of the way, so I don't have to deal with that crap. And I've still learned a hell of a lot more. I mean, actually, I shouldn't say that. Like the chemistry and biology classes I took in college, I probably learned more than I would learn on my own because I wouldn't actually put the time in to do all that type of lab work and stuff like that. Right. But other than that, I've learned way more since I've been out and actually was interested in looking in these things. and trying to look at things from as many angles as possible too. Because like you were saying, Shane, the whole thing about, you know, they present you this information and then they'll openly mock anybody who is opposing that information, rather than just saying, well, okay, here's another idea. Even if you present it as, you know, well, this is what this guy has to say. I don't personally agree with it, but this is what he has to say. No, let's examine this and see where you come down on it. Yeah, that's not an option. That's not presented to people. You know, so I mean, I try to do that on my own. I try to teach my kids the same way. Like, you know, even if just because daddy tells you something, don't believe it. You know, I mean, granted, I do like to play a lot of jokes on them, but still, you know, so, you know, don't necessarily believe it because I tell you, go look into your own. And you always got to, you have to be able to look at things from multiple angles, unless you're a bloody collectivist who only wants to play a partisan game, which unfortunately is most of the people we have to deal with.
Yeah. Because
like you were saying earlier with the pictures that people just automatically believe, oh yeah, that's happening now. That has to be Trump doing it. No, it was your boy Obama, you know, and this again, going back.
Oh, I'm sure we'll see plenty of ones of Trump doing it, but you know, like,
we won't see those till the next time around. Until who we got up next? The Rock. He's going to be the president next. I don't even know. Like who's? Yeah. Well, that's when the Trump pictures will come out, and they'll blame it on Dwayne. So it's all Dwayne the Rock Johnson's fault. But that's how it works, you know. So
right.
Yeah, gotta love it. Anyway, so yeah, we're. Now I lost where we go. We were talking about history and stuff. We bounced all over the place. This is why I love these conversations. How much time we got? Yeah, we keep going. Anyway, so yeah, the I forgot how I wanted to word that. See, this is what happens when we don't have a plan. We talked about before. I don't like to have a plan. I just like to have a conversation. Then we just hit a wall.
I do have one question for Ben. I think it'd be interesting.
Oh yeah,
kind of regards to related to history, but I mean, you've been in the libertarian anarchist community for some time, and you've watched it kind of develop. You've hung around with a lot of folks in it. I guess you know, when you take a look back on its development into today, I mean, what do you see? Do you see that there's you know, progress going forward? Do you see, you know, libertarians and anarchists, you know, predominantly falling for the same tricks of the past? I mean, what's your outlook on the future of the libertarian and anarchist community?
Not sidestepping the question, but all of the above. You know, if you go all the way back and read the stuff, and I know you have from like the 60s and stuff, you have separate groups that within the same umbrella that some of them are saying, well, you know, if we can just get this guy elected to this, or if we can just get control of this party, or if we can just have a say, like 1968, I remember, I don't remember it from happening because I wasn't aware of it at the time. But knowing people who went through it later, you know, at the Republican convention in '68, essentially the Libertarian group there did a protest where one of the guys, a guy that I know lives down in Kentucky now, lifted up a draft card and lit it on fire in the middle of the convention hall, as protest to the position that the Republicans were taking on the Vietnam War. And there was a lot of real serious libertarians that, what's his name? That was the speechwriter for Barry Goldwater.
Carl Hess.
Hess was in on that. There was a bunch of them, real important people that were in on that. And you think about it now, it's like that was a lot. That was a really big thing to happen. You're not going to see that today. You're not going to see somebody make that kind of a protest at the Republican National Convention today with that kind of a libertarian and possibly anarchist twist to it. And you know, maybe there's a reason why, because it's useless. It means nothing. It didn't do anything in the long run. It brought federal attention onto a guy that later on pretty much the feds ruined his life, you know. But what did it really do? And you look at these lessons like, okay, over and over and over, libertarian leaning or freedom desiring people have constantly thought that if we can just get the system to tweak a little here or there, if we can just get our say in it a little bit, if we can get the guy that we all trust and we all love and we know he's that one good politician, if we can get him into this position, or if we can just get him on the national news talking about the things that are important to us, we're going to make a great headway. And that same mistake keeps getting repeated over and over and over, and we never grow out of it in that sense. And yet, here we are, the three of us here in this room, we don't buy that. I mean, we're not buying into that
Certainly
story. We've gone beyond that. And there were people even back in the 60s, you know, that said this is not the right direction. You have to find freedom for yourself in a more individual way as quickly as possible and as effectively as possible. And you're not going to get it from the Republican National Convention. And so even then and even now and all the times in between, we have all been running in different directions, getting different results. I think now we have a huge advantage with, you know, in the late 60s and early 70s, a guy would have to write something either by hand or with a typewriter and then get it converted into microfilm and then try to distribute it, or he would, you know, type a newsletter and have a physical list of addresses that he had to type each address onto the newsletter, fold it up, staple it, and mail it through the mail at a charge of, you know, each one of those had to have a stamp with it. And now, you know, we probably have, the three of us on our email probably have a more extensive email distribution list than, and we don't spam people with it, but I'm saying, you know, we have a more extensive a list of people to send an email to than Murray Rothbard had at the peak of his newsletters that he was doing, and the infamous Ron Paul newsletters. At the peak of their distribution, we probably have more people than that on the three of our email lists. So that means our reach is so much more than it was just a few years ago, and our ability. And again, you know, the more people like us get that laser focus and stop worrying about what is Trump doing? Is this different than Obama? Is what is he going to repeal this? Is he going to tax that? They're going to do everything they can do. They will always do everything they can do to take freedom from us. But what's our response to that? You know, and that's where we have to have that laser focus to be able to get past all the noise. And I think there's more and more of us that are doing that. I don't know what the proportions would be, say, compared to 1970 or 1980 or 1990, but I'm really encouraged that there is such a core group that are not so easily swayed as to think that, you know, if we can just get so-and-so elected as the Libertarian candidate, then we're going to, you know, that guy's
such a cruel joke.
Yeah.
God.
It really is. I mean, that's what it is. It's a cruel joke. It's like there's got to be some Republican operative somewhere just rubbing his hands together, giggling at every Libertarian convention, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. If someone's sick of politics, you don't bring them into a political party that's never actually done it. That has, you know, a lower success rate than even the bigger two parties. That's just the cruelest joke you can pull.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you mentioned what happened at the Republican convention all those years ago, and how it hasn't happened since. Because they don't have to. Because you get James Weeks showing up at the Libertarian convention, and the Libertarians freak out just as badly. Oh my God, what is he doing? He's ruining our name. And I still, I said it at the time, and I still posit that was the greatest moment in Libertarian convention history.
Yeah,
it was the most what James Weeks did by stripping on stage was the most libertarian thing anybody has ever done at the Libertarian convention.
There should be, and I'm saying this with love to James, there should be a naked fat guy at every Libertarian gathering.
Yes, absolutely. I'm all for it. You know. But yeah, I've talked to some other people who've been around this for a while, this whole movement and whatnot in the community, and I'm always. It always helps me to hear that when people like you just said, there definitely seems to be, there's more of us now, so that's good. There seems to be progress. I mean, granted, there's more people in the world too, but there does seem to be a slightly bigger percentage of us, which is good. And the whole idea that there's more, or at least seemingly more and more that are kind of rejecting all the other stuff and kind of headed more and just focus on freedom. We're not doing it that way though. No government crap. We're just gonna focus on freedom. We've talked about that a bunch, Shane and I, over the past week. Because it's been a big theme that keeps coming up, that there are more people, at least seemingly, focused on the individuality and not, giving up on using the state is, well, it's still, yes, it's bad, but you know what? At least we're doing something, and it's one good, it's a step in the right direction. I mean, I've said plenty of times before, I'm not as much as I despise pretty much all laws and government in general, and the fact that I won't participate in political crusading anymore. Like, those days are past me. I'm not somebody who's like, if we're at whatever state of the union I happen to be stuck in at that time, if they pass or lift a law that makes my life better, it's not like I'm going to stand out in the street and go, no, I'm going to do the opposite now because the law is like, oh, yes, I'll accept it, but it's still not a step in the right direction.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, because, and I think that at least in some ways I was kind of vindicated in the past year and a half with what Trump has done, because I kept trying to tell everybody when the last election was happening that, you want better things to happen. You want, obviously, yes, Hillary is bad. Yes, I will fully say that. I've said it plenty of times before. I think she's one of the most evil creatures who has ever slimed their way across this earth. But just because you get some good things, like, the quote-unquote good things government does, or a president says in his campaign, on the campaign speeches that he actually follows through with, I think it's counterproductive, because when you have these wins from government, when you get, we stopped this from happening, or we got this law passed that's better, in our view, better for everybody, all you've really done is given yourself a brief respite. And you've also, as far as I look
now we can go back to sleep. That we've had these one or two successes.
Well, yeah. On one hand, yes, but for me, the bigger point is always that anybody who may be on the fence, who may have started to become disenfranchised with government on the whole, who may have finally been like at that point where, like, that's it, I've tried the Republicans, I've tried the Democrats, nothing works. It really is all just the same. People who are in that position, I find more often than not, when these little wins happen, they jump right on the government. They jump right back on the government bandwagon again. It's like, and now you've lost them again. Now you have to wait for some other. I mean, granted, it doesn't take that long for bad shit to happen with government.
Instead of pulling them away from politics, they're just right back into the.
It's a pacifier. Wrap the baby in a nice warm blanket, give it a pacifier, it'll stop crying. And there's always a thing that we don't see that they do. Like, if they're going to give you, so they'll give you, recreational marijuana in this state. But what are they doing at the same time? They're making sure that everybody with a marijuana card can't own a gun.
Yep.
Or whatever. There's always something. That's just one example. But there are things that I can't even think of where they swap out, well, we'll give you this little bit of freedom while we take this over here.
Yep.
Or while we crank up the import fees on this, or the export fees on that, or where we dump money into the sugar subsidies, or into the corn subsidies, or where we just dump an incredible amount of money into the research on some pet project of some senator, but nobody will notice that because, hey, you got, legal medical marijuana in this state now, or whatever. And it's just a pacifier. It's a distraction. It's like, I use this metaphor pretty frequently. The magician is on stage, and if you take away all the flash, his tricks are really simple. But he uses distraction. He uses literally the smoke and mirrors. But he uses this lightly clad, a beautiful assistant that's always, your eyes are always going over there and not noticing that he's holding a button to make the thing do this, and or he just pulled that out of his sleeve, or whatever. There's always a distraction to keep you seeing from what he really wants to get done. And that's what government does. If they're waving something in front of you, here's your medical marijuana, it's because they're doing something else that you don't know about, that you're allowing yourself to be distracted by, and they're taking something away that's far more significant than what they're giving.
Right. Yeah, it's as Ray has said. I mean, the current political system we have is just the result of failed and successful campaigns of the past.
Yeah.
That's all it really comes down to. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what is that? I was going to say it's Harry Brown, but no, it was who's the founder of Fee?
Oh, was it Leonard Reed?
Yeah, it was Leonard Reed. I think it was one of his quotes about the fact that I might be wrong, but but the fact that anybody who's looking to political reformism is completely missing the point that you're admitting that it hasn't worked the first 50 times, and why the heck?
Right, the reform of the we're currently at the reform of the reform of the reform of the other reform.
Exactly,
and here's where we are today.
Exactly. Have you not figured this out yet, folks? It's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no, though, because people just keep getting sucked into it. And,
oh, but this dynamic personality is different.
Well, yeah, but like, I mean, with the examples you were bringing up, Ben, like, especially with like, how people just get distracted and go, oh yeah, this is the good thing, and they don't see the bad thing coming. I mean, one of the most recent examples was when everybody, all the libertarians for Trump and all the people who went alt-right and whatnot and all tried to say, oh, look, he's giving us the tax cuts he promised us. Don't you, are you guys going to finally admit that he did something good? And I'm like, okay, first of all,
did he cut spending along with it?
I'm like, well, yeah, exactly. I'm like, first of all, do you remember the Reagan conversation I tried to have with y'all folks? Remember how Reagan is still praised to this day about how he cut taxes? Yeah, look at the actual record. Look how spending jacked up, and look how this. And I said at the time, you just wait. He's going to cut those taxes, but you just wait. And sure enough, it wasn't a week later that he started announcing all the tariffs on the steel tariffs and the aluminum tariffs.
Which is tax.
Exactly. And not only that, the one thing that most people seem to miss is the tax plan he put into place, the tax cuts. I think it only has like a 9-year window on it. And then everything goes back to like where it was. And it's like, did you miss that memo? Did you miss that part of the memo? Did you only, because you only focus, you're talking about laser focus. All they were focused on is, tax cuts, which I'm not, if they're going to try to extort me for even less, I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say no on principle. I'm going to continue to pay the same amount of extortion I've been paying this whole time. But, and I'm all a big fan of Stefan Casella and, just lower my goddamn taxes. I love that attitude. But yeah, you got to look at what else is happening. And with any government, but specifically the government of the USSA, one is that is in, well, I say theoretically because that's all bullshit anyway. It's all made up money. Not made up currency, I should say. It's not even fucking money. But like with a situation where if you take things at face value, with a country that's in that much debt, you can't possibly cut taxes without trying to replace it with something else. So the fact that anybody gets excited about these things, it's like, and again, it's even funnier because a lot of these people are the ones I mentioned earlier who are all about the study of economics, and that's how they got here. It's like, I'm the economic idiot when it comes to you guys. I freely admit that economics is my weak point. But even I can see that if you're getting a break now, but you're going to have to pay for it more in other ways later, that's not economically sound. Why would I be cheering that? Why would I be cheering that I don't have to shell out, when tax time comes and I have to write that check, that I have to write a slightly smaller check, but I'm paying more for everything else in my life because of how the prices had to be raised to compensate for that.
The seen and the unseen.
Yeah. And on top of that, if you consider how much the IRS takes in total, and if you consider how much the IRS costs to run, our tax dollars really don't have that much of an influence in government anyway, because the IRS eats most of that itself. Mostly the government runs on debt. Mostly they just create new money and borrow, and almost all of the budget is based on that. So what that does is it creates inflation, which taxes, and you guys both know this, but it taxes us silently, invisibly, far more than the IRS taxes us. And that's so if steel, if there's going to be a few cents added onto steel that's being imported into the US, or if there's, an extra tax on imports coming from Europe for cars or whatever these little taxes are, they may sting and they may raise the price of individual products that we buy. But as the dollar is devalued by massive printing and by more and more debt, that's what the government really takes from us. They take the bulk of our wealth through inflation, and there's nothing we can do about that other than get rid of an inflationary dollar. Right. And the government's not going to do that because that's how they pay everything.
Yeah, they rely on that system, obviously. Yeah,
it's kind of like, I hate to pick on them, but it's kind of like, audit the Fed. Why? We already know what they do. We already know everything that they're doing is dishonest and it's thievery. So you want the government to admit that, and then what next? Stop the only way the government funds itself? I mean, I'm for that. Sure, let's shut the government down today, but that's not going to happen. They're not going to do that. You have to be realistic about these things, and putting a lot of effort into a campaign and really, really pushing something without thinking it through and what's the logical conclusion that's going to be in the end. What are they eventually going to do? And no matter what, they're not going to open up and audit the Fed and start having real money, and they're not going to do that. We have to do that under the wire and without their permission. And we are. Cryptocurrencies are trying, at least some of us in the cryptocurrency world are trying to do that, and I think we got a pretty good chance of it. I think cryptocurrencies have a real good chance of a real good bloody nose onto the state.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I definitely do, and especially as now it's been almost 10 years, I guess, since Bitcoin launched, and with all the other cryptocurrencies out there now, the fact that at first the governments tried to ignore them, and then they tried to attack them, and now a lot of governments around the world are trying to find ways to work with them or trying to get them so they can adopt it. I mean, you have to believe that. Well, I mean, even not even believe. You just look at the track record of everything. Yeah, they're scared. They recognize
FedCoin is coming.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's already here. What is it? The Petro? Is that the Venezuelan cryptocurrency?
I know Venezuela's talking, and it was illegal for Americans to buy that, right?
Yes, it was. Yeah, but they're already trying. They're trying with the FedCoin.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me, that just means, they're scared. They recognize exactly what you were saying, Ben, that this does have the potential to just shake up everything, because the more people that drift in that direction, the less they need. And then, even if the Fed sticks around and they keep printing that, they'll obviously have to print less of that fake money, because not as many people are using it. But if that path continued, then hopefully we get to that NEMA position of where just like Facebook, 3 million users, nobody's logged in 10 years, and that it does seem to be headed in that direction. I mean, yes, will governments getting involved and trying to find ways to regulate it, adopt it, whatever, will that keep us maybe less free in that sense? Sure, but that's one of those steps in the right direction that I'm all for, because again, people are doing it outside of the government. Yeah. The governments are now they have to, like, crap, we got to do something.
They realize they can't stop it. So what's the next best thing? Well, to regulate it. And unfortunately, although I mean this makes sense. Assholes like the Bitcoin Foundation and other organizations are just trying to make Bitcoin, the new Fed coin, make it cuddly for regulators,
right?
And make sure you get your bit license and all that. And it's just not going to work. There's no way it's going to work. And I think it'd be a terrific thing. I didn't used to have this outlook, but I think it'd be a terrific thing if Fed coin actually came into fruition and it was blockchain based, even if it was centralized as it would be, inflationary, all the same stuff they would do with paper money. They do it on a blockchain, fine, because then they've already it's kind of like PGP. When they started using PGP, then okay, this is some pretty good software. I think I'm going to use this too. Once they start using blockchain technology, I think it'll be that much easier. Once it's there and it's deemed credible by the state, then we can start telling people, all right, now you want some privacy with that? Let me help you out.
Yeah.
So I used to kind of that used to be my worst fear. Like, oh my God, they're going to adopt this technology. Yeah, they are, and I think it's a good thing.
And I have a crazy view that I think maybe I don't explain it all that well sometimes. I think it's been misunderstood a few times. But I'm all for government just growing incredibly. Just like, let them grow. Tax like crazy. Tax a whole bunch. Build a whole new department. Build 10 new departments. Expand government in every direction. Because the more you do that, the more you trample on people, the more they want freedom. And that really, in a market, the desire for a product is what drives a market. It's not the desire to sell a product. I mean, you could sit around with, if Henry Ford created cars and mass produced them, but nobody wanted to buy them, it wouldn't matter how many he made. He's not going to make any money, and it's not going to, he was responding to a market need. The market had gotten to the point of where cities were too dense to be filled with horses and all the manure that comes with horses and all the stables that are required to handle horses, because horses have to be kept alive all the time.
Right.
But a machine can be turned off and stuffed over there and left alone for any amount of time and then go back and get it again, and it doesn't poop and you don't have to feed it. So there was this huge demand for mechanized transportation. And Henry Ford was just the guy who figured out a process to manufacture these things in a more efficient way than anybody else had, and he made an incredible amount of money off of it. But it wasn't because he had such a great product, because it wasn't really. It was a horrible product. So it wasn't the great product. It wasn't that he was manufacturing and pushing it. It wasn't that he went out and evangelized and said, oh, you need a car because blah, blah, blah. He didn't do that. There was a market demand for it, and people responded to that market demand. And with freedom, the only way you have a market demand for freedom is if you have somebody actively attempting to take away your freedom. That is the only way. It's like I've used the oxygen metaphor so many times. You sit around every day and you never think about breathing. That is, if you're healthy and you're normal. You sit around and you never think about breathing. But if somebody walks into the room and they put their hands around your throat and start to strangle you, there becomes only one thing in the universe that's important, and that is getting more air. And you will do whatever you can do to accomplish that. And that's kind of what the government does. They'll squeeze a little bit, but they'll let you breathe a little bit. Then they'll squeeze a little bit, and then they'll let you breathe a little bit. But at the point of where you realize, I can't be squeezed like this anymore, then you're forced to do something about it. So in that sense, I'm like, yeah, grow, government. Grow, get your own cryptocurrency, grow like a weed, take over more things, create more departments, oppress us, go ahead, beat us down, have more
entrepreneurial ventures for the Agoras. So
yeah. Hire 100,000 new cops, put them out on the streets, have them just randomly beat people. You couldn't do anything to push our cause any great. Don't stand out there showing people a silver coin and saying, oh, I'll give you this for a McDonald's hamburger. No. Have a cop beat somebody half to death and film it, and then put that out and let people see it. That's going to win more hearts than, mocking somebody because they don't know the value of a silver coin. That's just, my rant.
Well, it was a good one. But you're right. Because most people, unfortunately, do either choose not to recognize these things or just can't until it happens to them.
Yeah.
It's... you see it all the time. People defend, and then all of a sudden they finally get arrested for some stupid bullshit law, and it's like, oh crap, it really is oppressive. So in that respect, I mean, I mean, obviously, I don't want to be oppressed any more than I already am. But as we've also been discussed here, and Shane and I have been discussing for the past week or so, people like ourselves, we're all about seeking freedom for ourselves right now anyway.
Right.
So yeah, you want to continue to oppress the country as a whole, we're going to keep trying to find our pockets of freedom, and I think we'll be all right.
Yeah.
But for the rest of the people, unfortunately, I mean, as much as I don't want to see people getting beaten by the cops and stuff, you're right. Unfortunately, that may be what it takes.
Yeah.
And the other thing, Shane, you mentioned about we were talking about the Fed coin thing and stuff. That's actually a position I shifted to too, where in particular, like I'm kind of a fan of Ripple, even though a lot of people call it the Fed coin and stuff like that, because I trust what comes out of Ripple Labs and what they're telling me. I'm taking the at face value a lot, but it seems to me like that's their whole attitude. It's like, well, yeah, governments aren't using Ripple, but they are using the Ripple Labs technology and stuff like that. And, they're very open about it. It's like, well, why are you doing this? Well, because if we can get this as adopted mainstream, then it opens the floodgates for everybody else. Because now all these other people who to this point have still managed to never hear of cryptocurrencies, or who have been scared off by the FUD and everything else that goes around about them, or just the volatile prices that we've dealt with over the past couple of years, all those people who most of them are pretty devout statists in their own right will go, oh, this is something that that they'll make the connection and go, oh, this is something the government's using. Well, then maybe I should use it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure you can have they can reverse transactions and such too, so it's more safe for the average end user.
Yeah, it's definitely I mean, like I said, I
don't like that, but
yeah, but for what we're talking about here, for our purposes of furthering the cause of freedom, and also eventually having the grip of government be loosened because they can't do anything about it anymore. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good thing to pursue, and just let them do it. Yeah, great. Let them integrate it, like you said, Shane. I mean, fuck it. If they want to have their own cryptocurrencies and their blockchains, awesome.
As long as they don't force me to use it.
And even if they do, I mean, that's part of what government does. But even if you remove that, it's still like like I said, it's showing more people that this is now the way, and that even governments had to say, okay, well, we got to do this. Well, then maybe those crazy fuckers actually had a point. You know, it's happened enough over the past couple of years where, you know, with whether it was the Edward Snowden revelations, what Chelsea Manning brought out there, all these things that a bunch of us, you know, and some of the older generations who've been talking about this for years, and we're always told that, oh, those are the crazy crackpots, those are the conspiracy theorists. It's like, well, no, they were right. They were 100% right. And even some of the most devout statists have had to go, okay, maybe you had a point. And that's all we really need. I mean, at least that's what I find, is as long as somebody, no matter how rigid they are in their ideology and no matter how much their indoctrination has warped their mind, if they can pause on anything and go, oh, wait a minute, maybe you were right about that. That opens the door for the next time something happens when you want to have a conversation with them, as long as you present it in the right way, that you can go, now you remember a couple of years ago when you were calling me a nutbag, and then I was proven right. Now here we have this situation. Why don't we try to take it from a different perspective this time and give me the benefit of the doubt for a little bit, and then we'll work with it. And, you know, that's how you make progress. And, you know, if we couple that with people getting beaten more often, then hopefully we will reach that point that, you know, that everybody just says, fuck it. Because, I mean, as I've said a ton of times before, history proves out time and time again, you only need about 10% of a population or a culture to change that population or culture. And as long as they're working at a religious level, they'll get it done, because most people are inherently followers. They want to be led. And that may sound messed up to some people, and you may be thinking, you know, I mean, obviously most of the people who listen to our shows, I think they fancy themselves leaders, but a lot of people would get offended by that. But it's just, you know, that is part of human nature. I'm somebody who still does not believe that human nature is fixed. It's just been in a standstill for a very long time. I mean, obviously humans can adapt, otherwise we wouldn't still fucking be here. But, you know, people just need to have that push. And I think all the stuff we're talking about, these are the pushes we need. And yeah, like I said, yeah, bring the oppression on, man. We're going to keep finding our freedom. We'll be all right.
One of the things about human nature, just throw this in real quick, I look at trying to view what human nature is under our current circumstances is not a good laboratory for that, because it's kind of like studying animals at a zoo. If you go into nature and you study animals in their natural habitat, where they're not influenced by exterior influences, then you can kind of get an idea of what the mountain gorilla is like, or what wolves are really like, or what penguins are really like, or whatever. But if you go to a zoo and you try to study the exact same animals in a zoo, they do not exhibit the same natural tendencies as they do out when they're free. And humans are very much like that. We behave very differently in cities and suburbs and even in small towns than we would under free circumstances, because we have this giant sword hanging over our heads all the time, knowing that at any particular time that the wrong bludgy can just, for any particular reason, decide to take you on as their personal project and change your life. And that hangs over all of us. And this is a thing that like your neighbors know, even though they are philosophically so opposite from us that it's amazing. Deep within their mind, they know that at any particular time, it can come down on them. A city can decide that their back porch is doesn't have the right permit and has to be torn down, or they can just decide eminent domain. We need your property to run this gas line through, or whatever, and they all know this. They all have this hanging over them. So, in a very real sense, our human nature is not what we see when we walk around on the streets. What we're seeing is zoo behavior. That we're not really sure what human nature is, unless you've spent time in like Borneo or somewhere, or central Amazon or something. Then you get to see a creature that has almost no relationship to us.
Yeah,
they behave so much differently. We are largely reacting to 13,000 years of dealing with the state. So it's kind of polluted our brains a bit.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
Maybe there's some sort of imprint on our genetics.
Well, it is. I mean, like you said, it's 50. Like, what is it? What, Jericho? Is that the first? The first government state, whatever that we recognize, I guess. So yeah, that was somewhere around then. But that is a really good point, because I mean, I throw out that term about what I think about human nature a lot, but I don't really take that into consideration. Yeah, you're right. We haven't got. I mean, I like to think that I'm free, or I'm getting freer and stuff like that. But yeah. Even if you break out of the indoctrination of the school systems, you're still indoctrinated by the culture that has been set up and continue to grow and be twisted over the years, and that you're right, we probably don't know.
Also, I think we've got an idea though. If you look at like the culture of various second realms, whether that's Midwest Peace Liberty Fest or other events like that, we have. As I said in my presentation, it gives us a chance for our culture and our philosophy to exist in physical time and physical space and time. So I think at freedom festivals and places like that, we have a much clearer idea of, well, how are we going to act while we're free? A lot different than how we act in the servile society, that's for sure. So I'm definitely of the opinion that. Build these second realms, and if people are going to be followers, and they want to follow us, then they're fine. But we'll teach them how to be independent and help them get transitions. So
Yeah. Also, there's been sort of a passive selective breeding in the sense that when somebody stood up throughout history and said, this thing that's going on is wrong and we can't tolerate this anymore, he usually gets hung or head chopped off, or burned at the stake, or whatever. So his idea, they've made every effort to stop it. I think of John Brown. You have this guy who just could not tolerate the system as it was anymore, and he's like, no, what we need to do is we need to go into this armory, steal their guns, take them into the South, and arm the slaves and kill the slave owners. That's the idea. That's the plan. And the government was like, no, we'll kill you. You can't do that. But so they like cut off that breeding stock. We have to get that thing separated from the herd and kill it as quickly as possible. Yeah. So we have suffered that. I don't know that it's really genetically modified us in any way over the eons of time, but I think it probably has made humanity a lot more docile and herd-like than we were, say, 10,000 years ago, when somebody's like, well, no, we have to bow to the Pharaoh. He's like, because this and this, and you're like, I don't think so. I think the river will rise and fall whether the Pharaoh is alive or dead. No. The Pharaoh controls the river. I don't think so, But those guys get weeded out of the population, and their ideas don't get an opportunity to propagate. But now we have something that they don't have. We have the ability to communicate with all those other radicals that think that way, and connect
network
with them.
And start these projects and such. Yeah,
and meetups. Like the thing in Michigan. I think that's critical. We've been talking while we've been together here about other locations to have on private property where events like that can take place, where we're not dependent on somebody else's campground, and we're not dependent on a park or something like that. And I don't even know where what the ultimate end of that could be, but it's sure something that makes you think about it.
Right. Yeah, and have these things more often, like once a month.
Yeah.
Have temporary autonomous zones all over the place. Maybe even some PAZs, some permanent autonomous zones, permaculture farms located around, just all over the place, where people Vonuans can just travel around and stop at places where they know they can be free.
And we don't need 5,000 people in attendance to this.
No.
25, 50, 100 maybe at the most, but you can have a pretty good festival with 15, 20 people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's all about the quality of the people, not the quantity.
Right.
But it's true. Yeah. It's getting out there and experiencing that freedom. I don't know. I mean, I've seen it at all the fests that I've been to. Anytime a newcomer comes around, you see the wide-eyed look on their face, like, oh, this is what's possible.
Yeah,
I didn't know this could. I was like that the way the first time too. It's like, wow, look at all this. This is great. Why can't we do this all the time? Well, because unfortunately most people don't think like us, but no, that's all right. We'll keep well, I don't know. We'll keep doing our thing, and hopefully more people will follow. Because like we said, most people are followers, and most people really just need to see things actually work.
Yeah,
and there's no other way to do it, especially with the stuff we're talking about, other than just to get out there and do it. Because it's not like. With the exception of people like Dale Brown and his threat management, which is pretty much the only thing going on right now. You can't really try to challenge the police. You can't move in and say, "Hey, I'm going to start my own force and let's compete" and stuff like that. That doesn't work. Even with the school systems, yes, they allow private schools and stuff like that, but it's still like you got to follow our little thing. So you can't really break into these monopolies. So the only way you can really do it is find ways to work outside of it. And obviously there's risks involved there, but you have to be willing to take those risks and just be able to, because once you're a success or even a minor success, other people will recognize that and go, oh, well, heck, if he can do that, I could do that. I could do it better, and that's where, that's where it all starts. So yeah, I'm we've been talking about that. I'm a big fan of getting these, fests and type that even if it's just like people getting together, like we were talking about with
even if it's 10 or 15 people just getting together to meet at some Taz, that's still incredible if it could happen more often. That's the idea, is to get with the second realm, is people can either go to a freedom festival every year and that can be their experience of the second realm, or more kind of like my goal, like I want 90 or 95% of my life to be spent in those areas. So
right.
I think the end goal is to just bring as many people into the second realm as often as possible, and I think just Taz's and little events and parties and meetups is kind of where it's at, so that we can get in physical space. A lot can happen, a lot can be discussed, a lot of really incredible projects and pursuits of self-liberation can be started and finished, and all sorts of stuff. So I'm actually pretty optimistic about that, but the state will be the state.
Yeah, unfortunately, but yeah, I do share your optimism. I've flipped back and forth over this over the years, and I started out all gung ho about trying to get Incapistan up and running immediately, and then getting mad at everybody who doesn't understand why that was such a good idea. And then I kind of gave up and just said, oh yeah, it's not going to happen, but I'll just keep pursuing my own thing and try to focus on that. And it just, aside from the fact that there's a reason, aside from my voice, that I'm called Eeyore a lot, I am kind of a pessimist, but I'm seeing these same things too. And it's just, every little positive now for me, just when I see it, it's like, okay, we are moving in the right direction. The collective, we, the royal we. But it's happening, and it's happening slowly. But again, if you look back at history, all these things, they all start slowly, and if they're going to take off, it's because people are just dedicated. You mentioned John Brown before. Yeah, he's somebody who went out and just did everything, the way he saw it should be done. And he's obviously he is one of my heroes, but he got cut down, but other people picked up the torch and tried to carry it after him. But sometimes you need that, though. You need some people who are just going to say, fuck it. Yeah. I'm going out, and if they take me down, well, you know what? At least I did it. So that, but he's actually another one who's been stripped from history largely. Most people. Oh yeah. I remember the first time I heard about him, it was all in the negative light when I learned about him in school.
Yeah, the one famous drawing of him makes him look insane. He's holding a rifle and his long, crazy beard and his crazed eyes, crazy look in his eyes, and that's what you see in the history books in school. He's a madman. He's clearly a madman. So whatever ideas he must have had must have been crazy. We can't. No, wait a minute. What was his idea? Let's not have slaves?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
What a wacko that guy
that guy's
is.
a nut.
Well, that's why that's why I do these. I still fancy myself a radical abolitionist, because that's what he was, and that's because there was a lot of those moderate abolitionists back there who were like, yeah, he's nuts. We should end slavery, but we'll get to it. Let's just do it. Let's do it in steps. We have to do it in steps.
It's got to be gradual.
Yeah,
we can't do this all at once. It's Gary Johnson may not be great, but God damn it, he's more libertarian than those other folks. There's actually a Facebook page. I got in a big debate with someone. It's called Libertarian Gradualism, and these jackasses. I don't know what else to say. Oh. It was frustrating. It was so anti-libertarian. It just wasn't even funny. It's like, yeah, Gary Johnson. Yeah, he's our guy. So, we've got to go with the guy who has the best chance, who's pushing the most libertarian ideas.
Well, isn't that Block's whole stance? That's his whole. That's the whole basis behind Walter Block's Libertarians for Trump, or Libertarians who forever, because he always thinks, they have some libertarian-esque qualities, so we should vote for them.
Yeah, hate to pick on poor old Block, but you know, if
he does it to himself, Ben.
If you go back and find his discussions around the 2008 realm, he was saying, Obama really surprises me because I thought he was going to be a lot different than George Bush. He didn't learn. He said the same thing then. He thought Obama was going to do, you know, because the way Obama talked in 2006 and 2007, he's going to be way better than Bush. And then like, oh, he's doing the same thing Bush did. How is this possible? Walter Block, you're an old man. You've lived a long time. Learn this freaking lesson.
He's a smart man, too.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
How in the hell can you
you know, you keep hitting yourself in the head with the same hammer every 8 years. Learn the lesson and stop hitting yourself in the head with a hammer. You can't get freedom by supporting an oppressor.
Yeah. Well, you know, maybe he likes getting hit with a hammer. I don't know.
Well, but Batty A's hammer is not as big as Batty B's hammer. No, I don't want to get hit by a hammer. Stop it.
Yeah, right.
No hammer. When the guy comes at me with a hammer, it's my goal to break his knee, take his hammer, and bash him with it. Not be, oh, I'm so happy you're hitting me with a smaller hammer.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right. Well, with that, I'm looking at we've been going about an hour and a half now. I guess we could wrap this one up. But this has been a lot of fun. I mean, obviously, like I said, Shane and I have been here for a couple of days. We've been having a great time, and Ben and his family have been awesome hosts.
Yeah,
so,
thank you.
Thank you for that, Ben.
Shane's probably going to head out of here soon. I don't know if I am. I'm going to just stick around. I like it here so much. But before we get going out, so once again, thank you, Ben. This is it's always great to get to talk to you. I mean, this has been awesome. We all those conversations we probably should have recorded. You know, whatever. Maybe the NSA will give those to us one day. But you know. Anybody, you guys, you want to say anything in closing before we get going, Ben?
Hey, I just appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys and the bonus of getting to take a swipe at Walter Block. That's always fun. So, you know, I can't complain about that.
Hey, I leave all of my shows open for people to take swipes at whoever they want. I do it plenty. So, Shane, before we get going,
I guess it's been great here hanging out with you, Ben, for the past couple of days or so, and it's great to chat with you on mic and off mic.
Thanks.
Lots of knowledge, and you know, as Jeremy said, you guys have been just you and Cindy and Kai have just been so welcoming and. You know, I guess great hospitality. So
thank you.
Certainly appreciate that.
Amazing food too. Oh my God, that's another reason I don't want to leave. I'm like, do I really want to get back in the car and start eating storable food again? I don't know. Maybe another day.
Right. So yeah, I guess the journey has to continue though. So, but not to say I can't return.
Yes. Right.
Always welcome back.
Excellent. Well, that's always good to hear. That means we haven't been horrible hosts like some people in the past, I guess. Anyway, I'm not going to start taking shots now. All right. So on that note, we will get closing out. Thank you again, both. This has been great. I always love being able to do in-person shows like this. We don't get to do it nearly that often. Shane and I have done a fuck ton of them this week, which has been great.
What will this make, like 10 hours of content?
At least. But hopefully this will hold me over for a couple of months until I can get out and sit with people again. But either way, it's always great to talk to you guys. So this has been Abolitionist Abstractions and a whole bunch of other shows because Shane's probably going to put it out too. But as for my stuff, this has been Abolitionist Abstractions. All of my information can be found at solpodcast.org and at steemit.com/@abolitionistj, which I would prefer you go to first if you can. But anyway, other than that, Patreon is still running for SOL. I do apologize. I haven't had any content out there for a while, but you guys are going to be getting dumped with a whole fuck ton of content soon. So just be patient. In the next week or two, I'll be releasing a whole bunch of stuff. So hopefully that'll tide you over. But other than that, we'll get going. So thank you again, everybody, for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Love, peace, and voluntary interactions for all.
Indians scattered on dawn's highway bleeding. Ghosts crowd the young child's fragile eggshell mind.
This is Daryl W. Perry, host of Free Talk Live. This November, I'll be running in the world's biggest and most popular marathon, the New York City Marathon, and I've accepted a spot on Team Innocence Project because I'm a passionate supporter of their work. Since 1989, 353 people in the United States have been exonerated by DNA testing, including 38 who pled guilty to crimes they did not commit, and 20 of whom served time on death row. The Innocence Project provided direct representation or critical assistance in 180 of these cases. With your help, the Innocence Project can help even more people who have been wrongly convicted. As part of Team Innocence Project, I'm raising awareness about wrongful convictions and raising funds to help free the innocent. I've already paid the race registration fees. However, to secure my spot on Team Innocence Project in the New York City Marathon, I need to raise $3,500 by November 1st. You can support the Innocence Project and help me secure my race entry by going to run.freetalklive.com.